Welcome to Understanding Wildfire with Professor Monks. Today's topic, Adaptation to Fire. Fire has been part of the Earth's ecosystems for a very long time, essentially as long as there's been anything growing on land to burn. The earliest life forms arose over 3.5 billion years ago, but they lived in a world with very little oxygen in the atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere originally had a very large amount of carbon dioxide in it, but around 1 billion years ago, new life forms started changing that carbon dioxide into oxygen. The oxygen content of the atmosphere increased, providing one leg of the fire triangle. But all of these early life forms lived in the ocean, where fire can't happen. The first land plants appeared around 460 million years ago in what's called the Ordovician period. They were small, close to the ground plants similar to mosses and lichens. But if they dried out, they could burn. Our first definite fossil evidence of fire comes from the late Silurian period, about 419 million years ago. Forests, and thus forest fires, show up in the late Devonian period, about 385 million years ago. For context, the Mesozoic era, the age of the dinosaurs, ran from about 252 to 65 million years ago, and the earliest humans evolved around 2 million years ago. In all that time, organisms have had lots of opportunity to develop adaptations to fire. In broad strokes, there are 3 things an organism can adapt to do with fire: survive it, exploit it, and encourage it. Let's start with surviving a fire. Fires are, obviously, pretty destructive to any organism that burns up. So a major category of fire adaptations involves finding ways for individual organisms or their species to survive a fire. If we look at animals, we see 2 main approaches. First, some animals flee from the fire. If you can run or fly fast enough, you can get away from the fire, or at least make it to a refuge area where the fire can't get you, maybe across a river or in a rocky place with little fuel. A related strategy is to run into the fire, passing quickly through the fire front and hanging out in the area that's already burned. The second approach taken by animals is to hide from the fire. This is usually done by burrowing. Soil is a good insulator, and the heat from a fire goes upward, so animals like insects or wombats can dig down into the ground and wait for the fire to pass. Plants can't move around, but they've developed a variety of other adaptations to help them survive a fire. For example, some plants have very thick bark that acts as insulation, preventing the heat of a fire from damaging the living layer beneath it. These plants may also have buds hidden in the bark, ready to sprout into leaves after the fire if the smaller branches and twigs are burned. Other plants store up energy in an underground root or tuber. A fire might burn away the part of the plant above ground, but the tuber is protected by the insulating soil. After the fire, the plant can resprout from this tuber. Some plants have evolved ways to let their seeds survive a fire, even if the parent plant is killed. Seeds that get buried in the soil are better protected from fire, as are ones with thick coatings on them. Many organisms go beyond just surviving a fire and have adapted to exploit the favorable conditions that can exist after a fire. For animals, the big bonus after a fire is all of the new growth. Plants will be trying to grow in the burned area, and their fresh new shoots are much tastier than the old growth that was there before the fire, so herbivores are drawn to burned areas. Predators, including human hunters, know this, and so they will stake out burned areas waiting for their prey. They have the added advantage that the fire burned away a lot of the cover that prey animals might hide in, making it easier to hunt. For plants, there are 2 big advantages to growing in a recently burned area. First, the fire has cleared away your competition. If you can get the jump on the other plants, there will be nobody there casting shade or grabbing the water and nutrients that you want. Second, fire can fertilize the soil. Ash is made up of all the materials in the fuel that don't burn. This includes a lot of useful nutrients. It's one reason why humans often burn areas to prepare them for agricultural planting. Surviving a fire is one good way to be well placed to take advantage of the good post-fire conditions. Other plants have seeds that are adapted to sprout only after a fire has gone through. Sometimes these seeds are held in cones on the parent plant, as is the case for some kinds of pine or the Australian Banksia plant. Other times, the seeds lay dormant in the soil until a fire occurs. It's not uncommon to see areas that have recently burned completely blanketed by newly grown flowers. Sometimes these are species that were thought to be locally extinct, but it turns out their seeds were just hanging out in the soil, waiting for their chance to bloom. Scientists have identified various mechanisms for how seeds know it's time to sprout. Some seeds are activated by the heat of the fire, which causes their hard shell to crack. Others react to chemicals and smoke. And some simply rely on physical scarring or abrasion to open the shell. So if conditions right after a fire are so great, why just wait around for a fire to happen? Why not encourage fires so that you can take advantage of them? In fact, several species do this very thing. There's one species that makes extensive use of fire to reshape ecosystems for its own benefit, encouraging the growth of favorable plants, protecting fire-sensitive species that it needs, and even using fire to hunt. That species, of course, is humans, but we're not the only one. Humans are the only species known to be able to ignite a new fire from scratch, but other species can encourage and manipulate fires. One example from the animal kingdom is the Australian firehawk. Indigenous people have known for a long time that hawks will pick up burning branches and use them to spread fires around in order to flush out small animals that they can prey on. Western scientists finally documented this behavior a few years ago. In the plant world, some ecologists argue that certain species of plant have evolved to be optimal fuel, thus encouraging a fire to take off anytime there's a potential ignition. This is referred to as the Much hypothesis, after a researcher named Bob Much. If you read up on this issue, you'll find lots of scientific papers with much puns in their titles, like Much Ado About Nothing. The eucalyptus tree is an example of a plant that some people think has evolved to encourage fires. Eucalyptus leaves are full of very flammable oils. The trees shed their bark in long, shaggy strips that are very easy to light on fire. And they're very well adapted to survive fires, often having seeds that only sprout after a fire, so they can handle a fire better than most of their competitors.